Oh boy, we've all heard the term get back to basics. For some, it makes your eyes roll, and for others, it conjures up, well, boredom. But not so, says today's guest. Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk because there's a who's who of superstar athletes that happen to agree with them.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jollis.
Today's guest, Alan Stein Jr., is an author, speaker, and performance coach with 15 plus years of experience working with top basketball players like Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Kobe Bryant, and I've been on his website, plenty more. He now shares his approach and expertise to enhance individuals and organizations. He emphasizes the importance of habits, mindset, focus, and discipline to improve outcomes. He's the author of Sustain Your Game, High Performance Keys to Manage Stress, Avoid Stagnation, and Beat Burnout. And he's with us today. Welcome to the show, Alan.
Oh, man, it's so great to be with you. I'm excited for a fun conversation.
Let's mix it up, you. All right. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, too. Let's dive in. And yours is a really interesting journey. I've got information from your publicist, but I like poking around. And I was looking at your website, running around, and I really liked there was a story on your website where you were talking, it's an amazing story about you and Kobe Bryant. And I'll just call it the 3:30 a.m. story. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I absolutely do. That's a signature story I open up almost every keynote with, because as you've teed up so beautifully, it's really the most fundamental aspect of what it is that I teach. And it's the lesson that I learned from Kobe Bryant back in 2007 when I had a chance to watch one of his really early morning workouts. And I remember as a young coach being very surprised at how basic the drills were that he was doing. Now, he had an unparalleled work ethic and unbelievable focus, but the actual drills he was doing were very, very basic. And when I asked him about that, and in my estimation at that time, he was the best player in the world. And when I asked him why a player of his stature was doing such basic drills, he said that was the key to his success because the best never get bored with the basics. And that was really a life-changing moment for me because it's when it finally clicked with me that just because something's basic, it doesn't mean it's easy. And people use those words as if they're synonyms, but they don't mean the same thing. Most of what it takes to be incredibly successful and to be a high performer is very basic in premise, but almost none of it is easy to do consistently.
Yeah, I hear you. It's it's like you hear musicians, they'll put in like 1,000 hours on a song, one song.
Yeah.
But that's how they appear effortless on stage. It's, even for speakers, and I know that you stepped into the pit, as we call it. I refer to it as ring work. What most speakers need is an audience and just the ability to just spar and move and dance around and take some shots and throw some shots until what the audience sees looks absolutely effortless. And that's what's appealing. That's authentic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we're describing is repetition.
Right.
And most of those repetitions occur during the unseen hours. A good portion of working on any craft, even the speaking craft, which by definition we perform when the lights are on. But the work that we put in ahead of time, the due diligence, the research, the rehearsal, the crafting of our message, all of that is done prior to ever stepping on stage. And it's the same thing in basketball. It's the same thing in music. It's the same thing in business. If there's any area that you're looking to enhance your performance, the key is repetition, 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 and purposeful practice combined with competent feedback, and then rinse and repeat over time. And you can improve in just about any area of life.
Yeah, I hear you. And I like the feedback as well. We got to be able to take feedback. Alan, if you ever want to win a bar bet, ask somebody if you've never given a presentation before and you're giving it for the first time. Do you think you're going to probably go too fast or too slow? And most people will take that bet and they go, oh, I'm going to be way too fast. I don't know what I'm doing yet. And the answer is, oh, no, you go way too slowly because you don't know how to economize your thoughts yet. You don't know how to kind of trim it down and get those words and those phrases and those drills down to something very simple. That's why they pay consultants and coaches the big bucks when they can take the difficult and translate it to the easy. It sounds like that's what you do.
I certainly try to. I mean, that's kind of the tagline of my business, and a concept that I've really leaned into as I've gotten older. And that's my goal, is to help folks simplify success. I'm a big believer that complexity undermines execution. The harder we make things, the less likely we are to do them. And this is true in our personal lives and professional lives. This is true individually as well as organizationally. So for me, it's learning to simplify, break things down. And it's not always about adding more to our plates, but it's learning how to untether from the things that aren't serving us and helping us, and the things that are distracting us. If we can remove a lot of the white noise from our lives, that's another way that we can simplify what it is that we're trying to do.
Well, I can't disagree with you. All right. So let's take a look at some of the Alan secret sauce. And so, I mean, we already know it's repetition. But what I'm reading about you is you're not a guy who likes to deviate from the fundamentals, but translate that to business. You got a sales audience listening right now. You got some entrepreneurs listening right now. So translate it into their world.
Well, if we look at the game of basketball, and even for those that don't know the game very well, you know that the fundamentals of the game include shooting, passing, handling the ball, rebounding, defending. Like, those are the building blocks of what it takes to be a good basketball player. Well, if we're trying to level up any area of our life, and we'll use sales since that's what you brought up, a sales professional needs to ask themselves, what are the basic building blocks to being a good sales professional? What are the fundamentals that will allow you to sell at a high level? And while I imagine you and I could probably come up with a list and have a lot of overlap, it's really a question that each and every person needs to answer for themselves, and say, what are the things that I need to work towards mastery of during the unseen hours to get really good at the craft of selling? And whatever your answer to those are the things that you need to work on, as we said, through repetition. One that I'll lob out there is something you're doing a brilliant job of now, which is why you're so good at what you do, but it's the ability to listen, the ability to actively listen. I'm a huge believer that that's really the foundation of the sales process, is being able to listen to what your prospective customer or prospective client actually needs. What is the problem that they need solved? What are their pain points and their challenges? And what is it about your product or service that's going to help them do that? So if we just try to beat people over the head with the features and benefits of what we have to offer, we're really missing out on the opportunity to listen. And there's a saying that telling is not selling. And that the key to being good at sales in any area is to actively listen. And the best sales professionals I've been around, again, are doing what you're doing a remarkable job of right now. They actually do more listening than they do talking.
Well, I'm grateful, because I have to tell you, I'm sort of the Davey Martinez school of listening. Go 1-0 every day, because it ain't easy.
It's not.
That's what I'm going to tell people. Sometimes my wife gets on my case. She says, "You're such a big guy on the listening. How come you're not listening at the kitchen table?" And I'm exhausted from listening. It's hard work to listen. It's not easy. And we'll make a sales trainer out of you yet. You really did. I can go 2 days with a sales group. If they leave that room after 2 days, and they, for the rest of their life, will commit to just listening, actively listening, eye contact, shut everything down. Stop thinking about the next question you're going to ask. Stay put and ask some intelligent questions. If you can do those two things, the rest is really gravy. But you'd be shocked at how many people are all over every aspect of selling they can be, particularly learning features and benefits and wanting to talk about their solutions, and really have never mastered the art of listening. Yeah. It's hard.
Well, and it is hard. And it's something I'm still working on myself. And I don't know that I'll ever reach a level of mastery. But what I can say with a huge smile is I am a better listener today than I've been at any other previous time in my life. So I'm moving in the right direction. And that's really something I want all of your listeners to take away is, don't ever worry about where you are at the moment. Focus more on the direction at which you're going. It's okay to be human. It's okay to have flaws. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to acknowledge that right now you might not be the best listener in the world, but take pride and have optimism in your ability to improve that. And the reason it's such an important connective tool is when we actively listen, and you really said it so insightfully, we make eye contact, we have open body language and posture, a warm smile, we have a genuine curiosity and fascination. What we do is we send an unconscious message to the person speaking that I care about you, that I value what you have to say, that you are important to me. And what could possibly be more valuable than that sentiment when you're working with a prospective client or customer, is letting them know that you care about them, that they are important, and that you do value them. And, I've also been a believer that we shouldn't ever have to convince anyone to buy whatever it is that we're selling. If we ask the right questions of the right people, they'll convince themselves. It's all about qualifying the right prospect, the right potential customer or client. And if you have the right person in front of you and you ask them the right questions, you don't have to convince them to buy from you. They will convince themselves because they'll see unequivocally that it's the right fit. And when they come to that conclusion, instead of us trying to coerce or manipulate them into that conclusion, then we've got a much better relationship, and you'll most likely have a customer or client for life.
Oh, boy, I feel like you've been in one of my programs. I've been running for 20 years, a basic definition that I'll throw out in front of an audience, and then I'll say, now we'll take a day to build a repeatable, predictable process to do this. But if you want selling, I'll give it to you in one sentence. It's the art of taking an idea, planting it in somebody else's brain, and making them feel like they thought of it. And you can't get there, Alan, without asking them questions and bringing them to the topic you're looking for, analyzing, earning the right to get at whatever problem it is. And I want you to think about the athletes that you work with, because I know you're walking the walk. You can't just walk up to somebody, to one of your clients, and say, okay, so what's the problem? I have to earn the right to even and create trust to get them there. But once I do, I'm not there to solve the problem. I'm there to listen to the problem and let them explore the problem. Let them see the potential ramifications of it. If I do, I just have to get out of my own way. They'll get there. So you see our two worlds, coach, sales trainer, speakers, they do crisscross heavily.
They absolutely do. I mean, when I was in the basketball training space, what I was selling was my methodology. I was trying to sell to get buy-in and believe in from the athletes that this type of training was in their best interest to pursue their goals. You meet a high school age player who has the goal of not only playing college basketball, but eventually playing professionally in the NBA. I needed to sell them on the fact that taking care of their mind and body was integral to that process and to that dream. But as you said, it's about their dream. It's about their goals. And my job as the coach was to help provide the blueprint and the inspiration and the encouragement to help get them there. But the only way we could do that is by listening. Because again, we have to establish trust. We have to establish mutual respect. They have to know that I care about them as a human being first and an athlete second. And same thing with a prospective client or customer. They need to know that you're giving guidance and recommendations based on what's in their best interest, not in your best interest. The moment they think you're only trying to sell them to make commission or to make a quota or to hit a goal, then they're going to have some mistrust. And that's where we're going to have a problem. And when you can get to the point that you can qualify someone and actually say, this person is not the right fit for my business. They're actually not the best prospect for what it is that I sell. I'm going to refer them somewhere else. That is the ultimate confidence in a sales professional, because you're saying, I care so much about you that I'm willing to send your business somewhere else because that person will be a better fit for you than me. And really, it's all about fit. And in any business, we should want clients and customers that are the right fit for us, because that's how you build a loyal following. That's how you build folks that will be with you for the long haul. And it's not just going to be a one and done purchase.
Absolutely. And folks, if you want to see a guy walking the walk, I'm telling you, when I went to your website, one of the things impressed me, and we will have it on our site where we have the podcast, but I'm going to tell you, it's Alan Stein, ALANSTEIN Jr.com, jr.com. You go to that site, you're going to see a bunch of pictures that you've taken with different superstar athletes. But I'm going to tell you something, Alan. The reason why I'm bringing it up, made me smile, is those are authentic pictures. When I say authentic, I don't mean, you put yourself in the picture. I'm saying those athletes look like they're with a friend. I got pictures shaking hands with athletes. They look like I came out of a line or stopped them in the grocery store. Okay. And they're very nice. Yours look like there's an enormous amount of trust. I'm just reading the pictures, but I'm telling you, one after the other, it looks like you're legitimately a good friend of theirs. You got to earn that.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's an incredibly kind thing to say. And I would like to believe that I did develop a friendship throughout my career with the players that I had an opportunity to work with. And there was a mantra that I learned very early in coaching. And it's kind of the foundational mantra of transformational leadership. And that is choosing to go through the world with the mindset of, it's not about me, it's about you. And we kind of just touched on that in sales. Like, as a sales professional, if you're only worried about what it is that you're getting, your commission, your quota, that's going to be very short-lived. When you can learn to shift your focus off of what you want from people and put it on what you want for people, it makes you the most magnetic person in any room. That is how you sell, is by shifting that focus off of what you want and putting it on what the other person wants. And I really tried to apply that in my coaching practice. I mean, ultimately, my success and fulfillment hinged on how well I could help players achieve their goals and reach their dreams. So it wasn't never about me. It was always about them. And, earlier in my career, that was harder to do because, like most people in my early 20s and even late 20s and early 30s, I had some selfish tendencies. I had things that I wanted to accomplish, and I wanted other people's approval and earn certain accolades. But as I got older, I realized that was just a defeating approach, that the key to any type of sustainable fulfillment and ultimate high performance in any area of life is being able to focus on others and pour into others. And it doesn't mean we neglect ourselves. I mean, I prioritize my self-care so that I can show up as the best version of myself to pour into others. But if I'm working with someone and when I'm on stage, it ain't about me. It's about the audience. It's what can I do to add value to their lives? And once I kind of had that shift, everything changed. So yeah, I'm very thankful that I was able to develop friendships with the players I worked with. And that friendship was rooted in the fact that they knew I cared about them and their dreams just as much as I did about my own.
You've hit another line there. I dealing with an author who wrote about manipulation and influence. And I always feel like I'm letting people down when I say, that's actually just the difference between those is really just one word. It's not that complicated. It's intent. And that's exactly what you just defined, which is really what's the intent by getting somebody to do something, to act on an idea that you have. That's a really good move because it's going to help me. That's manipulation. And when you do it because your heart is out for that athlete, that business owner, that client, and because sometimes we have to ask tougher questions. Sometimes we have to help people who are struggling. It isn't always just a happy conversation. But when our intent is true, which is exactly what you just defined, then you're not manipulating anybody. It's to me, I think we have to get people over their fear that persuasion is not a bad thing. It's a bad thing when it becomes manipulative. But you could save somebody's career by being able to persuade them to put a drink down or to stop a bad habit. Obviously, they'll do it when the problems become big. Yeah. Your job, my job, is to get at it and earn the right to get into that conversation, create enough trust so we can do it before it becomes a big problem. And that's what makes you an incredible coach or consultant or assistant. But that's the line.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And what you're saying is making me think of the way I also view accountability. A lot of people hear the word accountability and they think punishment. It's similar to the word discipline. A lot of people think discipline is a bad word. I'm of the Jocko Willink thread that believes discipline is the key to freedom, that the way we get anything in life is by having the requisite self-discipline. But back to accountability, one of the things I've always believed, that accountability and holding someone to a high level of accountability is something you do for them. It's not something you do to them. holding someone accountable to a high standard of excellence, whether you're a parent and you're holding your child accountable, whether you're a coach holding your player accountable, whether you're a sales professional holding a teammate accountable, it's the best gift you can give them. Because in essence, when you hold someone accountable to a high standard of excellence, you're telling them, look, I care so much about you and I care so much about us that I am not going to let you get away with doing less than your best. I am not going to let you slide and sacrifice your core values or sacrifice our standards. I'm doing this because it's in your best interest. I want people in my own life that hold me to a very high level of accountability. And that's really what I'm thinking of when you're saying persuasion. Yeah, persuasion can be an amazing tool if we're using it in a way to help the person that we're working with. And if we can, develop that, as we've said several times so far, that mutual trust and respect, and we have the requisite buy-in and believe in, then holding people accountable is invaluable. And I try to surround myself with people that care enough to hold me to a high level of accountability. And then I do that to the people that I most care about. And I think that's key to us, not only performing at a high level, but also having a sense of joy and fulfillment in what we do, is continuing to raise that standard and doing everything we can to meet it.
Yeah. I wrote a piece called I'll Try versus I Will. And I was just looking at it the other day, and I, bending my arm, patting myself on the back. But I really like it, because when it comes to what you've just described, I think what everybody really fears in terms of accountability is, well, what if I fail? And now that I've got somebody watching me, now that I've outed what I'm trying, my goal, what if I don't get there? And I wish people would understand that I'll shake your hand either way. I just have trouble shaking the hand of the person who's too afraid to put that goal out there for fear they'll fail. I'm not big on the words "I'll try." I'll try is like a get out of jail free card that never ends. It's just, well, I tried. I gave it like I tried. No, I will be on that podcast. I will write that book that you wrote. And if you don't write it, I'm still going to shake your hand. We're going to have to deal with your accountability partner, but let's stop being afraid of putting ourselves out there and saying, no, that's something I'm going to accomplish. And you're going to watch me succeed and fail on a daily basis, but I'm not afraid.
Oh, I love that. So much gold right there. My mind's racing. The first thought is if someone says to me, well, what if I fall short? What if I fail and I don't hit the goal? I'll just say, well, congratulations, you're human. That all of us have fallen short at some time. I only reach about 50% of the goals that I set for myself, and that's by design. I made the mistake very early in my life, and this was rooted in some insecurities that I had, that I would set the bar so low that I was hitting 100% of my goals and everything. And it wasn't because I was performing at a high level. It's because I was aiming ridiculously low, because I had this intrinsic fear of exactly what you said. Well, what if I aim higher and fall short? Thankfully, I've done the self-work to help break through that and realize that it's okay to fall short of a goal. As long as you're sticking to the process, you're giving the best effort and having the best attitude, you're insulating yourself with people that are encouraging you and pushing you and supporting you and holding you accountable. It's okay to set such lofty goals that you may fall a little bit short. One of the most powerful words in the English language that I don't think we use enough is the word yet. I love saying, well, I didn't reach that goal yet. Maybe I fell a little bit short of the initial deadline, but it doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to give up on it. I'm going to go back to the drawing board. I'm going to learn from what I've been doing that maybe wasn't working as effectively as possible. And I'm going to give this thing another go. So I haven't reached that goal, ... yet. And another thing that I think is really important, another shift that I've made in my own life, I do set goals, and I have a variety of different goals. But once I've set these goals, these North Stars, if you will, I don't really focus on them or obsess over them. What I do is I put my attention on the process. I'm a big process and systems guy. So if I decide that I've got, goal X, once I have it, I'm not so much worried about the goal as I'm worried about the habits and the daily decisions and the behaviors and the process that will greatly increase the chance that I reach that goal. And then I put all of my effort into the process. And I found that when I do that, I tend to reach more goals than not, and the best analogy I can think of is building a brick wall. You've got a brick wall behind you there on your backdrop. And, the way to build a brick wall is to not focus on the wall, but it's to lay each and every brick with care and precision. And if you have the discipline to lay each brick exactly where it needs to go, well, if you do that consistently, the wall will just take care of itself. So when someone says that, they're afraid of not reaching a goal, I say, well, don't worry about it. Untether from the goal, focus on the process, focus on the things that you do have control over, your attitude and your effort and your enthusiasm and your preparation and your discipline. And if you focus on those things daily, weekly, and monthly, you'd be shocked at how often those things will add up and actually you'll reach your goal.
Oh yeah, man. I'm with you. I'm getting the hairs on my arm are standing up too.
Awesome.
Folks can't see it, but I don't do a presentation or a podcast without a lightning bolt on me. Been wearing this lightning bolt since I was 22. It stands for energy and enthusiasm. I call them the great equalizers. They'll never leave you. And when we don't bring them, shame on us. That's one thing an audience won't forgive, and they shouldn't forgive it. Other than that, you get out there and you hustle and you work hard. People take notice of that. People will respond to that. Are we getting into? You write about a winner's mindset.
Yeah.
I feel like we're kind of. Is this the winner's mindset that you write about, or are we sideswiping it? Because I feel like we're getting there. Tell me what that is. And
we're kind of touching on it in roundabout ways, and I'm loving this conversation because so many of the threads that we're talking about can be, we can weave them together. I simply define the winner's mindset is making a commitment to do the best you can with what you have wherever you are. Like full stop. It doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. Remember, we're trying to simplify success. Mm-hmm. Do the best you can with what you have wherever you are. And the reason I love that as a winner's mindset is it eliminates a trilogy of behaviors that I know from my own experience undermine performance, undermine productivity, and undermine fulfillment. And those behaviors are blaming, complaining, and making excuses. I am working relentlessly to reduce my temptation to blame, complain, and make excuses. And I use absolutes very sparingly. I try to rarely use them, but I can tell you as sure as I'm sitting here right now that you will never, ever improve your situation, make things better, or move forward by blaming, complaining, and making excuses. You might feel a little bit of a respite temporarily by venting something, but it is doing nothing proactively to move you forward. So the sooner we can reduce the temptation to blame, complain, and make excuses, it's almost as if we're taking this emotional weight vest off. We just become so much lighter and more nimble and more agile. And the phrase I like to use when I'm on stage or even writing on page is that if you're not emotionally agile, then you're emotionally fragile. And you simply can't win or sell at a high level if you're emotionally fragile. And again, with all of these things I've been sharing with you, I want to make the massive disclaimer that I'm not coming from a place of mastery. This is all stuff that I am still working on. None of this stuff comes easy by any means. And it's all stuff that I'm continuing to improve on. But what I can say with tremendous pride, just like with listening, I'm better today than I've ever been at not complaining, blaming, or making excuses. And, this is something that we can hold those around us accountable to. But one of the things we forgot to mention when it comes to accountability is I don't believe it's fair to hold someone accountable to things we're not willing to do ourselves. Do as I say, not as I do will undermine your credibility immediately. So if we don't want family members or friends or colleagues or coworkers or customers or clients, if we don't want those people to blame, complain, and make excuses, then the very first thing we have to do is eliminate that from our behaviors so that we can hold people accountable to not doing so.
Yeah. Wow. Like a smorgasbord there. I'm smiling over here because that was, I've done 260 podcasts. I'm coming in my out of my third year now. And this is the first podcast I've ever had where I really haven't gotten to my first question yet, but I don't need to. As you said, we're sort of circling and circumventing and working pieces in. And I'm really enjoying the flow of this conversation because you're bringing up so many really cool pieces. For instance, I'm going to back you up a little bit. You mentioned the word discipline. I was raised by a Marine, so I learned the word discipline, but point being that, yes, everybody thinks that that's sort of like a bad thing. I think I'm not disciplining my children. I'm just saying, if I said I was going to work till 6 o'clock tonight, I'll be at my desk till 6 o'clock tonight. I don't know about you, but this is, my wife makes fun of me about this, but I am proudly tell people I've never hit a snooze bar. I don't even know how it works. I don't know where it is. I know the clock's got one. Why would I hit a snooze bar? I made a commitment to get up at 6:30 in the morning. Of course, I don't want to wake up at 6:30 in the morning. It was a good idea last night, but that's the commitment that I made. And I refer to that's the form of discipline that I'm talking about, of making commitments with yourself and sticking with them. Let's not be afraid of that. Again, circling back, right? People don't like to out that because then they know they have to wake up at 6:30. They have to go through with it. But if you're listening to this podcast and you're listening to Alan, what Alan's telling you, isn't that what we're trying to accomplish? I mean, we're talking about goals here. We're talking about getting things done. So let's hold ourselves to those standards a little bit. And how's the book doing? This in the book, I'm going to be able to read a lot of this.
Absolutely. Well, before I mentioned something on the book, you said something really powerful there, and I want to make sure we don't gloss over it. Discipline is not something that's preset and genetically coded at birth, like eye color or height. Discipline comes down to daily decisions. You make the decision every single day to set your alarm for 6:30, and you make the decision to not hit the snooze button when you wake up. And you've done that for so long now that you've created some tremendous momentum and a really strong discipline muscle that for you, that may be an easier discipline than someone listening right now who's done the exact opposite for the last 30 years. But what I want to make sure that person listening knows, when I hear people say things like, I'm just not a disciplined person, I just remind them that that's not a truth. That's a story that you've been telling yourself. And the very next decision that you have to make today, you can choose to make a more disciplined decision. Whatever meal you're going to eat next, you still have an opportunity to choose the disciplined route of eating something maybe a little healthier or more nutritious than something that skews more on the unhealthy side. You still have that opportunity. It's not preset. Your destiny has not already been created when it comes to what you're going to eat, or whether you're going to work out, or what time you're going to bed, or what you're going to watch on Netflix. These are all decisions that you can make. And all you need to worry about is making the very next decision. You don't need to tell yourself that you need to be disciplined for the next 50 years. You just need to be disciplined for the next 5 minutes. And if you can make any decision in the next 5 minutes that's disciplined, then you can start to build the momentum that someone like you has built over time by going to bed at a reasonable hour, getting up at 6:30, not hitting the snooze button. So I just want people to know that when they say things like, I'm not a disciplined person, that is not accurate. That's a story that you're telling yourself, and you're the one holding the pen. So you can change that story anytime that you want by making more disciplined decisions. And that's really what I want to try and encourage folks to do. And discipline shows up in all different areas in our life. We have the discipline with discipline of the words that we choose to use. We have the discipline with what we choose to eat, or whether or not we choose to work out and move our body. The discipline in our financial decisions, the discipline for things for our mental health. There's a variety of components. And I just want folks to know that they have the power to make those decisions. And yes, it's not always easy to make the disciplined decision. There can be sacrifice involved, and it can be really challenging, but it's a choice. And I'm all about people not giving their power away and playing the victim card, but instead taking back that power and saying, I am in control of what I'm choosing to do, and I'm going to make disciplined decisions moving forward.
Yes, and don't be afraid if your disciplined decision doesn't work out the first time. I'm a Maryland guy, Maryland alum. So, I wasn't a big Dean Smith guy, but I respected him. And Dean Smith had a great quote. He said, you can't approach everything as life and death. Every game is life and death. Every move is life and death. He said, to begin with, you'll be dead a lot. And I used to have that up there, and let my buddies see it, but, we have to stop being so afraid of failure. It's why, I don't know if you're familiar with it, and I'm a DC guy, but really the story of the Washington Nationals 2019 team is a very inspirational story, because it's really, they followed one basic principle. Uh, and that was driven by that manager to go 1-0 every day. Just when you wake up, our goal, we have a very simple goal. We're going to go 1-0. And if we get beaten, guess what our goal for tomorrow is? Go 1-0. And I think that's sort of what you're describing, which is let's not beat ourselves up about failing or just wipe the slate clean and get out there and fight it out tomorrow. But it seems like some people they get knocked down and they go, well, that's it for me. And, and it's like, no. The Nats didn't win every game. They won the World Series. But they took that philosophy and they just didn't let it stick to them, though, the steps backwards. And it was inspirational for them and the fan base. Now we're rebuilding.
Absolutely.
So.
And what you're ultimately describing is something else I teach very regularly, which is the ability to focus on what's right in front of you, which by definition means to be in the present moment. It's very easy for us to get distracted by things that have happened in the past. And it's very easy for us to get anxious and worried about things that may or may not even happen in the future. And while I do think it's important to learn from the past and to prepare for the future, I believe in spending most of my mental, physical, and emotional currency and attention in the present moment. And one of the pillars of being in the present moment is learning how to move to the next play. And that's the terminology we use, which you just described so perfectly. It works great in baseball, by the way. If you're a batter and, the first two pitches are strikes and you're down 0-2, well, you don't have to worry about the last two pitches. Those are in the rearview mirror. Those are over. It's unchangeable. All you have to worry about is the next pitch, and if, like you said, if you do lose today, well, let's quickly wipe the slate clean and let's move on to the next play. This is so important in sales. If you have 4 or 5 sales meetings in a row that don't go your way, you get 4 or 5 no's. Are you dragging that negative energy into your 6th meeting or your 6th call? Or are you able to wipe the slate clean and move to that next play? And the ability to not drag baggage from the past and negative energy from the past when maybe we're in a little bit of a slump is really challenging to do. I'm not for 1 second saying it's easy, but it's necessary if we want to be able to perform at a high level. So, if you got 10 calls scheduled in a day and the first 7 don't go your way, are you able to show up for that 8th call as the best version of yourself? With the same energy and enthusiasm, the 2 E's you mentioned earlier, with the same optimism? Or are you going to allow those previous 7 calls to be self-defeating in that 8th call? And again, these are all things that are challenging to do, but we can build the discipline to have that type of mindset to always move to that next play.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's funny. I tell people, when they've been knocked down, I work with a lot of people in career transition and they've gotten, that form of no from hiring managers and recruiters and things like that. If I thought dragging that into the next call would help us in any way, I would say, man, let's drag it for all it's worth. But it doesn't work. And actually the reverse is true. You mentioned, losing 4 or 5 sales in a row, which, my hand's up in the air. We've all been there.
Absolutely.
But what's to say we can't take a walk real fast and say, well, what about 2 months ago when I won 5 or 6 calls in a row, when I won sales? What was that like? What was I feeling? Hey, what was that day like? Sit back down, have that front and center, and see what that next call feels like. Because sometimes we string those victories together because we're carrying an air of confidence. We're, the body isn't, as a sports analogy in a sense, the body is loose. It's not holding us back. We're not tight. You can't say that. Sometimes you have to take yourself mentally and put yourself there, but it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, the question I'm always asking myself, now, don't get me wrong. It's my preference to reach my goals. It's my preference to get all of the outcomes that I'm shooting for. If I all of a sudden was put in charge of this entire universe, you better believe I would reach every goal and get every outcome, but that's not the case. So for me, what I do is I'm always going back to the process. If I have a call and, I'm trying to get a speaking engagement and it doesn't quite go my way, they choose and select another speaker who they think's a better fit. I'm not in control of that outcome. So I try not to spend time worrying about things I don't have control over. Now, what I do is I go back and I say, all right, did I do everything within my control to put my best foot forward to give me the best opportunity for them to select me as a speaker. And I go back, and review my notes and review my correspondence and evaluate how I was on maybe an audition type call. And I learn from that. And there are many times where I can put my head on my pillow at night and rest just fine, knowing I did everything within my control to the best of my ability. And it just simply didn't work out. They went in another direction, and that's okay. Because there'll be another time where they will go in my direction, or they will choose me or feel that I'm the right fit. So for me, I don't worry so much about the outcomes. It's always about that process. And when I can look back and learn from it and say, okay, here's something I could have done differently. Here's something I could have shared in a slightly different way. Then I actually take that as a win, because now I just learned something that better arms me the next time I'm put in a similar situation. So same thing with these 4 or 5 sales calls that maybe didn't go your way. Is there a lesson that you can learn from them? If you can look in the mirror and with honesty, tell and say to yourself, I did everything I could. I was all about the prospect. I did my due diligence, and they just simply didn't go my way. Then as much as it still may sting, you should be able to live with that. The reverse is maybe you learn a few things that you could have done better, and you should be thankful, because now you can apply that to your next 4 or 5 sales calls, and maybe you'll see a different outcome. So either way, we're going to keep moving forward, and we're going to keep improving as long as we stay focused on that process.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would build on that by saying that even when it goes our way, it's nice to sit down, feedback, balance that feedback out, and go, okay, well, what did I do well? What are 2 things that maybe, so I can be a conscious competent? I don't want to be an unconscious competent. And what could I have done even better? Sometimes, and the funny thing is, if we follow that, I call it the 2 and 2. 2 things I did well, 2 things I'd do differently if I had that call again. Then why wouldn't we be having that conversation, win or lose? Yes. It becomes a nice pattern. And you notice I always start with what I did well, even when I lost. Well, yes. Because it's real easy. Believe me, the brain is dying to go. Try coaching somebody that way. You're a coach. Ask them what they thought. And here's another bar bet: 100 times in a row. And 100 times in a row, no matter what the outcome was, you'll hear something negative. That's sort of the way we're conditioned. It's a shame. I'm not sure where we picked that up. Elementary school. It's baked in there from long ago. But to condition the mind, regardless of the results, to not only stay in balance, but to start with the positive, because there's always something positive. I didn't get punched in the nose. I didn't get thrown out. I had the guts to walk in there. I'll find something. Yeah. And it's this longevity. It's a matter of just being kind to ourselves.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love the concept of paying attention to and acknowledging and praising the things that we do well. There's an old saying that says that which gets praised gets repeated. And we usually use that mindset to praise others. If we want to see our child repeat certain behavior, we praise them for that behavior. But the same thing works with ourselves. When we're doing something well, it's okay to be proud and have some pride in that moment for something that we did well, because we want to unconsciously recondition ourselves to continue to do that. So I think that 2 and 2 is beautiful. And you also said something too about looking at the big picture and looking at the long term. Going back to kind of the Nationals in baseball, if you take a player that hits 300 for the season, which is really, really good, that's Hall of Fame caliber. If you hit 300 over your career, you will go to Cooperstown. But even if you look at any player that hits 300 over the season, during that season, there were times where they were 0-10. And then there were other times where they were 9 for 10. There were other times, like it's always going to ebb and flow. It's kind of like the stock market. If you only look at the stock market every single day, you'll drive yourself crazy. Right. But historically, over long periods of time, like 30 years, the stock market continues to move to the upper right corner. It continues to go up. But if you look at it on a granular level, it can be so volatile. And it's the same thing. Like even when speaking, I have a certain number of paid speaking engagements that I strive to do every single year. So I need to look at the calendar year. I can't get caught up in any one week and go, oh man, 4 engagements didn't go my way this week. Oh, the sky is falling. No, I have to zoom out and look at the big level and say, okay, that was maybe a little bit of a down week, but I've also had some really highs and some really good weeks. But the law of averages over time will take care of themselves.
Yeah. welcome to the world of professional speaking. You're as good as your last
Yes.
talk. I don't really worry. I think your performance will level. I can already tell you'd be dynamite in front of an audience. I don't worry about your ups and downs. What I worry about with professional speakers, I don't know if worry is the right word, is in a perfect world, I'd want to be out 1.4 nights a week. It's sort of your batting average there. Don't work that way.
Right.
Sometimes we're out heavy 2-3 weeks all over the place. Then we're home a little bit. Again, it would be nice to be able to balance. It doesn't really work that way. So we got to kind of go easy and just keep grinding, doing what we do.
No, I was just going to say what I've learned to do in speaking, because it is incredibly seasonal, as you just mentioned, is I've learned to be thankful for both times. When things are really busy, I'm very thankful to be in demand, and I'm thankful to make good money and be in front of a lot of engaged audiences. When things are much slower, I'm thankful to have more time with my kids, more time for self-care, more time to write and record content that I can put out there. So I choose to focus on the pros of being busy as well as the pros of being slow. And I can lean into either one of those. And to me, that's the key. Because if we allow our self-worth, our self-confidence, our sense of fulfillment and joy, if we allow that to ebb and flow with the successes and failures that we face in our lives, boy, that is as Dean Smith said, that you're going to be dying a lot. If your self-worth and self-confidence, happiness and fulfillment hinges on whether or not you make a sale, you're going to be in for a really hard road. And if mine hinges on whether or not I land a speaking engagement, I'm going to be in for a really hard road. So I think the key is going back to focusing on the process, focusing on our habits and our discipline and our mindset, iterating and tweaking things when maybe they didn't go as well, but also paying attention to the things that we are doing well and praise ourselves for those things so that we condition ourselves to do them more consistently.
Yeah, I'm going to leave that right on the table the way it is. Sustain your game. High performance keys to manage stress, avoid stagnation, and beat burnout. I tell you, there were two things that happened I've never done in 3 years. One is never got to my question because we had a conversation, which I think is the perfect podcast. And two is I've never finished a presentation by saying, you should hire this man. I can tell, the funny thing about professional speaking, Alan, is when it's good, everybody knows it. And when it isn't good, everybody knows it. It's the beauty of the business. I can tell, and by watching a little bit of some of your clips as well, you're the real deal. You're in the right profession, and the world's your oyster. It's wide open for you. I'm looking forward to watching your path because it's going to be a good one. Very grateful you were on the show. How do people get a hold of you?
Well, man, I share that sentiment. This was a real joy. You are a phenomenal host. I can tell this isn't your first rodeo. You are a tremendous listener, and you've really got the chops as well. So this was a lot of fun. And I think it's cool that we didn't really get to any questions, yet we covered a lot of really meaningful and memorable and impactful material. And you were the one that led that dance. So I thank you. If anyone is interested, they can go to alansteinjr.com. That's the major hub. I'm at Alan Stein Jr. on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I take a lot of pride in being accessible and responsive on social media. So if there was something about our conversation that struck a chord, or someone wants to ask a question or share a story of their own, just shoot me a DM on LinkedIn or Instagram. I'm great about getting back with folks. And then if you're interested in either of my books, Raise Your Game or Sustain Your Game, you can grab them on Amazon or Audible or wherever you like to get your books and audiobooks, but they're very easy to find. And this was so much fun, man. I appreciate you very much.
I appreciate you too. Yeah. This is why I like to do podcasts. A little bit different than a blog. Anyway, Alan, very grateful to have you on, and you stay safe and keep up the good work.
Likewise.
Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time, everyone. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.